going on, everyone? Chris with Journals, Comics, and Pop Culture. This is our top 10 hottest selling comics of the week, our weekly video series brought to you by PopCultureZone.com. Before we get into this week's top 10 books, don't forget to check out PopCultureZone.com's. Their links are below. Check them out if you're interested in getting your hands on some awesome exclusive and incentive variants at affordable costs, CGC slabs, and of course all different kinds of pop culture items, including toys and statues. And if you're buying raw books, they ship at a flat rate fee of only $4.99. Pop Culture Zone is also on eBay, where they still hold a 100% customer feedback rating with over 8,000 ratings this year alone. Those links are below. Check them out and make sure you follow them on eBay as well.
What we do here, it's the, hold on, wait for it. The top 10 look back props or flops. We want to know your props or flops too. What we do here is we take the top 10 hottest comics of the week from Cover Price, which is released on a Monday. Chris then waits these technically 7 days.
Yeah,
to see how they do in the market. Then he picks 3 books that kind of are interesting to him and tells you why. Then he gives them props for, hey, these books are doing well for this reason, or flops for this reason. Again, we want to hear you guys. I'm giving flops by accident. I don't know. But we want to hear you guys.
Are you giving yourself flops, Jeff?
I'm giving myself flops because I'm just too animated. But we want to hear you in the comments giving us props or flops for these books as well. But Chris, let's just right now just get into the top 10 hottest comics of last Monday based off Cover Price. Again, this is sales data, real sales data, not just some list somebody put together. Here we go. At number 10, The Secret History of the War on Weed, number 1. By the way, we have a little something to say about that in a little bit. Bored Ape Yacht Club Bike, limited to 500. At number 9, we have Catwoman, number 42. The 1 in 25 cover. At number 8, we have Hawkeye vs. Deadpool 0, the first appearance of Jane Foster's Thor costume worn by trick-or-treaters. At number 7, we have Thor, God of Thunder, number 2. First Gore, Gore the God Butcher. At number 6, we have Thor, God of Thunder, number 25, the first cameo of Jane Foster as Thor. At number 5, we have Thor, God of Thunder, number 3, wrongfully being listed on eBay as second appearance of Gore the God Butcher. Actually, God of Thunder number 4 is the correct one.
Shame on you, eBay sellers.
I don't know if you guys are starting to see a trend here, but last week was the release of the Thor trailer. So anyways, at number 4, we have Thor number 8, the first reveal that Jane Foster was Thor, and also the cancer reveal. At number 3, we have Thor number 2, first full appearance of Jane Foster's Thor. At number 2, we have What If number 10, the first appearance of alternate reality Jane Foster as Thordis. That's terrible, that name. Yeah. At number 1, we have Thor number 1, the first cover appearance of Jane Foster's Thor, and the second cameo. I am out of breath. Woo! I mean, but Chris, do you see any sort of trend going on here?
Not at all. No. But Jeff, I was almost going to name this week's segment to top freaking Thor books, because 8 out of 10 are because of Jane freaking Foster.
I love it.
In Gore the God Butcher. But yeah, look, I mean, it's exciting at one end, but there's some complexities here that I'm going to talk about. I almost picked all 8 Thor related books just to talk about them and give them props or flops, but I couldn't do it. We're going to stick to 3. So how about it? My first pick, Jeff?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right, guys. My third was Thor, God of Thunder, number 2.
Oh,
number 2, Gore the God Butcher. There we go. Thor number 2, first appearance of Gore the God Butcher. Now, remember, we take the sales data from what Cover Price used and reported when these hit the top 10 last Monday, and then currently, as of today, I took the sales data and crunched the numbers myself of what they did over the last 7 days. When it hit the top 10, this book had a 93% upward trend in sales. When it hit the top 10, last week's high, 9.8, $529. This week's high, 566. It's a 7% increase in value. But check this out, guys. This is why I always tell you all, don't just focus on the outliers. Don't just focus on high sales. Because even though there was a high this last week that beat the week prior's high, no 9.8 sale after that high of that 566 sale, no sale reached over $499. So every other 9.8 book that sold this week was below even the prior week's high when it made the top 10. Now, last week's average raw, 181, next to this week's average raw, 191. And I always say this as well. Take your average raw with a grain of salt. It doesn't specify grade. You can have high grades, mid grades. You just take up all the dollar amounts of all the units sold, divided by how many units sold, and there's your average. This is a, very modern book. So you might not have too many low grades, but still a little bit of a 9% increase in value there. But I don't think that really means too much. Looking at all the numbers when I crunched them, it's performing roughly the same, if you ask me. So, props or flops, what do I think of this book? I think that Gore the God Butcher is a cool character. I think that Christian Bale is probably going to do a great job. He wasn't in the trailer. If we get a trailer, which we probably will before the movie comes out, with him in it, that's like inevitable, right? I think that this book, when that happens, is going to go up from where these highs are going to go up at that moment in time. Does that mean you should buy this book now? First off, I'm not here to tell you to buy or not buy anything, as I always state. I have to give this book a big fat flop. Why? Because, guys, we had, and I will probably continue to use Thanos from years to come. Thanos could be the most iconic villain that we might ever see in the MCU, maybe, but if not, he's definitely one of them. He's that guy right now. Who knows? Kane may give him a run for his money. Even his book had decent drops after his little saga in the MCU. Marvel Studios has done a lot of one and dones. I think Gore the God Butcher is going to be a one and done. I absolutely do. I don't think this book is going to hold these values. And because it's a more modern book, it's going to be hard for this book, in my humble opinion, to even get back up to these highs if it dips off in that nature. Now, do I ever think that this book will be what it was prior to even knowing that Gore was going to show up in the MCU? I don't think so. I don't think this book is going to ever crash and burn, but I can't, especially the 9.8s. You guys know how I feel, especially about modern 9.8s. There's going to, over the next, how many months do we have, Jeff, until this movie comes out?
I want to say it's July.
Three months or
3
months. I'm sure there's going to be an influx of 9.8s coming back from CGC and CBCS and, in the 9.8. So I can't with this book. I can't. Very, very risky. Now, if we talked about, if we had this book on a props or flops like 2 years ago, before we even had a God Butcher announcement, maybe then I would give it props, because you want to know why? Because with a lot of these books that are heavily spec'd on because of the MCU, it's all about timing and being ahead of the curve. Because if you're ahead of the curve, you're making bank. You could have got, 20 copies of these and bought them for like under $10 each copy, sent them all out to CGC and got some 9.6s and 9.8s, and you're making hundreds and hundreds and a few $1,000s right there in profit. But for right now, this is a big flop for me.
You kind of stole my thunder. Okay. Yeah, man. I was gonna say the same thing. Like, it's hard to spec on villains. It's hard. This is a perfect example of the train's left the station. Like, I mean, you have probably one more opportunity to get something if you want to flip it by any means. And again, Chris and I are not advocating you do this, but for those who spec for those who want like enjoy the flipping aspect of it. You know, if you could find it, you know, you may again have that one little window of opportunity before the next trailer comes out that will have Thor the God Butcher in there.
Yep.
Let's be honest, Chris said it, like Thanos was, you know, Thanos is mainstream now, right? My mom knows who Thanos is. That's my mainstream kind of litmus test. Like, so that being said, that book is dipped. You know, you try and see any characters that have survived and may have a future in the MCU, like Taskmaster. That book is kind of dipped. That's nobody talks about that book anymore. So if you're thinking about jumping on this now for your collection, by all means, there's never a bad time for that, right? But if you're looking to turn this around, train has left the station, Chris.
Yeah. And those two examples you use with Iron Man 55 and Avengers 196, you know, those are, you know, Bronze Age books that are already established keys that, you know, have a different supply and demand already on the market. And if you've seen what Iron Man 55 has been doing, it's finally picking back up. You know, but they're picking
Drax
back
is in there too, by the way. That's the first appearance of Drax.
And Drax. And they're picking back up though, because that's the comic book market. That's what the comic book market does for those kind of books, and it doesn't have anything to do with the MCU. This book right here is heavily driven by MCU and MCU spec, and that's what makes it even more volatile.
Yeah, and you know, people say maybe there's going to be a connection with Null. We'll end up seeing Null in the MCU. Who knows? Sure, but even then, it's still, my opinion doesn't change with that. So, anyways, that's a good assessment there, Chris. You have another book though that we need to talk about.
All right, who wants to put a wager on if it's going to be Thor or not Thor? Whatever. It's Thor, God of Thunder, number 25. All right, man. Now it's been a little controversial of like, what's the real first appearance of, you know, Jane Foster as Thor? But this is absolutely the first cameo of Jane Foster's Thor, and it is like in a premonition and whatnot. But that's how you label it, folks. Let's look at what this book did when it hit the top 10. 139% upward trend in sales. When it hit that top 10, it had a high CGC 9.8 sale of $255. This week, it jumped up there, $309. It's a 21% increase in value. That's a decent amount. So that's nothing to, you know, snark about. It's, you know, solid. But look at these average raws. Last week, 38 when it hit the top 10. This week, 36. That's a 5% decrease. But again, what do I say about average raw? You know, it's basically performing about the same as it was the week before. So, all right, what do I think of this book? Props or flops? Now, let me talk about Jane Foster's Thor. I like Jane Foster's Thor. I've only read a couple of the issues from her run, so I'm not. But I've read a lot of the Marvel Wiki and stuff too. So, but I haven't read the whole story arc. But I know how people feel about it. It's definitely a sought-after story. It's really praised. I'm excited to see Natalie Portman do this in the MCU, is her Jane. I think this character has a lot of upsides, both in the comics and on screen. This is what makes these Jane Foster Thor books, though, kind of, you know, risky as well. We don't know if Jane Foster's Thor is going to be a one and done. But it very well can be. You know, they could go the route where this happens, but then her cancer consumes her, you know, or they really are setting up this new Avengers team, maybe like an all-new Avengers team, and Jane Foster's on the team. Look, we don't know how much longer Chris Hemsworth is going to be around. We don't know. So much unseen here. Now, this book, as a raw copy, is a little less risky because when you look at a $30-something book, it's not super expensive. But am I going to give it a props or flops right now, Jeff?
This is a tough one. I don't know. I can't tell by your intonation or your delivery here which one.
Yeah. Awesome cover, by the way. I'm gonna give this book a flop.
Woo!
Yep. And here's why. With all the good things that I said, I just don't see these holding at what they're doing right now. It's just, and what I mean by that is it's not a good time to buy for any investment or speculation purposes. Let's just say it right that, because Jeff, we talked about last week, I could give a book flops or props for different reasons. You know, I gave a book props last week simply because, look, man, there was issues with the inventory coming in. You know, people really want, you know, Batman. They really like reading his stories, and maybe they just wanted to pay $15 or so to get that book. I think that book's going to be a good story, and who knows what happens to that character. I'll give it a flops because you're not losing anything with it really. But I'm going to be straight up and say this is specifically investment in speculative reasons here. I don't see this book doing anything in the short term unless we get Jane Foster's Thor in this film and people come out and she just killed it, and she's in the MCU for another 2, 3, 4, 5 films. And when I say 2, 3, 4, 5, I mean not necessarily her own solo films, but you know, she becomes a part of the Avengers, and maybe she's in the next trilogy of Avengers films or something like that. So even though I'm giving this book a flops, I want to make two things clear. I do think there's upsides to this book, especially if you're out just buying it raw. There's definitely upsides. I think this book as a modern book can have long-term return on investment. I do. I also feel like if you find this out there, you know, on the hunt, and you could get this book maybe for lower than what it's hitting right here, you know, you can find it for maybe under $30. Like I said, you're not breaking bank. You're not putting a lot of money out. But I just, again, when you look at these 9.8s, it drives me crazy that people are paying over $300 for this book. Because what did I say again? I mean, you could, even if you could get this book for $40 or $50 and buy a couple copies and send them to CGC and get one back at 9.8, you know, you've saved a bunch of money and made more money if you could flip it right now. But I don't know, Jeff. It's just for me, I'm not putting my money there. If you would have bought this, you know, even just a couple months ago, when you knew the movie was coming, when you knew the trailer was coming, and the book was selling, and I looked, and this book was selling for $10 to $15, I would have gave it props then. But now it's like tripled in price. You waited too long. I can't risk it.
I'll give it props, and here's why. For Raw, I would not pay I would not pay for that much money for a slab, but I'd be down to pay $35 for her first appearance. I think she's had, her character in Marvel Comics has had a major impact for many reasons, and now she's the Valkyrie. And I'm gonna bet on, don't take me at word here, I just have a feeling there will be more to Jane Foster's Thor in the MCU, or Jane Foster in that capacity. I would give it props. That's just my 2 cents right there, because of the impact the character has made in the MCU. Again, only if I buy it as a raw. But you know, for that, the character making an impact in Marvel Comics and potential long-term play in the MCU.
Yeah.
That's what I would say.
Very valid. This is a very fine line to ride here. At the end of the day, you know, if you like the way that I would give anybody props for buying it right now, I would give you props buying it right now if you weren't paying $300 for a 9.8.
Yes.
And you were paying $34 for it raw, and you really loved the character. That's
yeah, he brings up a good point here. I don't think Jane Foster will ever command as much as Beta Ray Bill. I agree with that, but that's not the discussion here. We're not comparing those two characters. I am really hoping we see Beta Ray Bill in Thor: Love and Thunder, but that's not like that. Again, it's just strictly at face value for this book is what we want kind of your opinion on. Props or flops on that, Tony. All right, Chris, your third book of the week. What do you got?
Well, it's interesting because kind of like your perspective on this last book ties in to, I think, what people are demanding with this book right now. And I'll explain that. But my number one pick is the number one book on the list from last week, and that is Thor number one. The first, these covers are just really
Beautiful.
awesome, by the way.
Beautiful. I think
First cover,
Otterman or
I don't know. Yeah.
I can't pronounce his name.
First cover appearance of Jane Foster's Thor. It's also her second cameo before her first full. So again, a really interesting, all of these books that pertain to her first. Let's look at these numbers and then we'll talk about it. When it hit the top 10, 104% upward trend in sales. That week, it had a 9.8 high of $395. This week's 9.8 high was 414, just a little 5% increase. But again, guys, look at this. Fair market value for the last 11 CGC 9.8s, $306. That is a 26% decrease from that high to $414 sale. So what's the lesson to be learned, my fellow collecting Padawans? Don't just pay attention to highs. You can't just look at those high sales. All it takes is two people that were like, had one too many, beers or were just, money, they just got paid and they're just focused on that auction that's ending at 2 a.m. in the morning or whenever it's ending. And, two people are bidding it up because they got that FOMO. That's could be the difference between a $414 sale and a $306 sale of this book. Last week's average raw when it hit the top 10 was 113. This week's average raw, 103. 9% decrease. Again, a similar movement, but I did see a lot of lower sales. There were definitely more spiked high sales that last week when it hit the top 10. Oh man, props or flops for this one. I was able to find this book at half price books for like $1, but it's probably like a 5.0. Oh man, props or flops. Here's the thing, Jeff, and this kind of goes to what you were saying about her first cameo.
Mm-hmm.
The market right now, out of all of her books, this is the one that has the highest value on the market. Whether it be her first cameo, her first full, or this one, which is her second cameo, but the first time she's on a cover. It's a little bit reminiscent of, Hulk 180 and Hulk 181, you can argue. It's also a little, although, Hulk 181's first cover was also his first full, Wolverine. But it's comparable to Bishop's first. Bishop's first appearance was a cameo, and he was on the cover in Uncanny 282. That book goes for more than his first full, where he's also on the cover, but it's his first full appearance. So, interesting enough, I think that's why I lean more towards flops on God of Thunder 25, her first cameo, because people are, when it comes to this character and her lasting impact, I think this book is always going to demand and command more on the market than God of Thunder 25. It's always been that way, and I think it's going to stay that way. And it's been that way. The command in terms of value has been that way so much because there was a time before so many people started talking about this because of the movie. But even when we first got the announcement, when, Natalie Portman came on stage and, grabbed the hammer and all that, even then, when people were flocking to books, they flocked to this one because of the cover and because a lot of people didn't know about God of Thunder 25. So, and technically, this is her first cameo in continuity because God of Thunder 25 is merely like a premonition. It wasn't really like her happening in real time. So, there's a lot more for this book that if everything you said was true about this character, this is the one that's going to be driven home. But as things are with characters, if this book goes up, those other books are going to go up as well. There's going to be that similar trend. Oh man, props or flops. Props or flops. We have never had a show where I give in all my picks either props or flops. It's always
Nope.
been a mix.
Nope. What is it?
Oh my goodness. I gotta give this book. I gotta give it flops.
Wow, we got the
Giving this
hat
book flops.
trick.
Yep.
Holy cow.
Yep.
We got the hat trick.
Look, again, guys. I think just what I will piggyback off of what Jeff said about this character. I agree. I mean, we don't know though, so that's what makes it more, more of a risk. It's risky because we don't know. I mean, look at Natalie Portman alone in her history with her contracts within the MCU and playing this character. They really, I don't know what they did to get her back in, and she could have said like, "Look, I want to do this, but you're gonna kill my character off or something like that, and I want to be done. I want to come in here. I want to be this amazing character that had such a good run in the comic books, and then I want to be done with it." We don't know that. We hope that she could stay around for a few movies. It would be good for her books, and it would be good for her character within the stories of the movie. I mean, we don't want to just see her once, right? But we just don't know. Regardless, I think this character has a bright future. I think the value of these books have a bright future, long term. But if this character isn't well received in the movie, or if this character is a one and done, or if this character just doesn't show up for a long time after, it's gonna be tough. Should I not say tough? It's gonna take a long time, I think, for this book to rebound. So again, I'm giving it props because $100+ for this book raw. Now remember, that's an average. Now I know that this is a modern book and you're not going to find a lot of lower grades, but when I was combing through the numbers, there was some books that were hitting above $150 for high grade raws.
Damn.
I can't buy a raw copy of this book for $100 plus. I can't do it. So that's where I'm at. If it was me and I really cared about this character, even just for speculation or investment purposes, I would have patience. I would take it. Everything's a gamble when you talk about speculating and investing. Everything's a gamble. I would absolutely take the gamble and say, I'm going to wait until after the movie and see if this book cools off to buy this book.
Man, this is a tough one too, because what I said earlier, how I think, again, she has had an impact in the Marvel comic, the comic universe. I do believe there is staying power with her. The reason I think she came back was because the first two Thor movies were not good.
Yeah.
She saw what Taika Waititi did, and that looks fun. You know, she was definitely aware of Jane Foster's history.
Mm-hmm.
And, again, Taika Waititi probably was a main draw for this. And I think that that the character does have a future in the MCU. I have a problem myself as well paying $100. So if we have to stick to that right now on a raw copy for $100, I would say flops. Because even if she does have staying power, I would wait until after the movie.
Yeah.
Because there will be a dip. That's what I would say to that. I believe in the character. I believe in that book. I don't believe in paying these prices right now because we're 2 months out from the film.
Can I give you a hypothetical?
Go for it.
If for some reason, and guys, this isn't like, I'm not spoiling anything because I have no idea. And I don't really see this happening, but let's just say, what if Thor Odinson dies?
Mm-hmm.
And at the end of this movie, and Thor and Jane Foster Thor not only takes up the mantle in this movie, but it sets her up to carry on that mantle. I think if that happens, though, that's one thing where it can actually drive these books up right after the movie releases.
Agreed.
But I just, yeah, again, that's such a huge,
What
that's
if?
a huge what if that I don't, yeah, and I don't know. I think, to be honest, I think that Thor, Chris Hemsworth, I think he has a little more
Yeah, I agree.
in him. I do. I would like to see him play a role in Guardians, and I would like to see him go up against Adam Warlock.
That would be fun. Of course, you love your Warlock.
Yeah.
Watlock.
Jeff, did you? I don't. Did you have any more to say about this specific book, or?
I do not. No, I
Okay.
said my piece.
I want you, before we end the segment today, I want you to bring up the top 10 again,
Okay.
because
Right now?
like I said, I really wanted to talk about all these books because you have 8 out of the 10 as Thor: Love and Thunder spec books, right? So I just wanted to go through these real quick. Obviously, I talked about Thor number one. We're gonna go from 1 up. What if number 10? The first appearance of the alternative reality, obviously, because it was What If. It's Jane Foster it's the alternate Jane Foster as Thor. So, folks, keep in mind, this is not Jane Foster's Thor. It's not. But what's funny about this book, Jeff, is that I think this is going to continue to be an iconic book moving forward. I'm not going to give it props or flops. I'm just going to say that I just really enjoy the book, especially with the homage cover there. I think it's a fun book that's going to have an awesome future. But look, if people are specking on this book because they think it's the real first appearance of Jane Foster's Thor, you're wrong. We didn't talk about Thor number 2, which is the first full appearance of Jane Foster's Thor. I would give this book flops because of the same reasons I gave the other ones flops, right? We talked about, God Butcher's first appearance. We talked about God of Thunder 25, first cameo, Jane Foster's Thor. And then, we didn't talk about God of Thunder number 3, though, which is not the second appearance of Gore the God Butcher. I would have gave this a flop simply because I think it made this list because people on eBay are not labeling it correctly. Yeah. And then we have, last but not least, and I had to talk about this, Hawkeye versus Deadpool number 0, the first appearance of Jane Foster's Thor's costume worn by trick-or-treaters. Holy goddamn. I had to end the segment before talking. I had to talk about this before ending the segment. Guys, the bigger reason why I gave these all flops today, all of them, especially this one. This is like I was saying when I was on Swagwa's channel last week when we were talking about is the movie hype out of control. You guys out there, you know who you are. I love you, but calm down now. Calm down. You are going to jump on eBay when there is an announcement of the first appearance of Thor's sisters, cousins, brothers, uncles, pets, first owner, shop workers, daughters, left pinky. And it's going to hit the top 10. I mean, this is just absolutely crazy. Oh my God, a trick-or-treater in the background of this random book. Some kid was wearing a Jane Foster Thor outfit. Oh my God.
You know what this reminds me of?
Oh my gosh.
Black Craftsman's scar. His scar. His scar. All right. Well, right
That's all
there.
I got
That
for you.
ends the top 10 look back props or flops. We'll have a new list to go over next week and give these at least three books props or flops. It's always fun, and we always like hearing from you all as well.